Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and never let a crisis go to waste. Order out of chaos, of course, that is the playbook of all great tyrants, and we are witnessing that take place across the board with a cashless society, which we've gone into many times before. And we do have articles like this one out of MarketWatch that says Fed says it is developing an experimental digital currency, and this is news that a lot of us saw coming, but it's really imminent at this point, and it's very concerning to most of you out there that aren't preserving your wealth in different things like gold, silver, maybe cryptocurrency, etc. And I'll get into the cryptocurrency aspect of this in a moment, because obviously there are differences between the cashless society that's centrally planned and enforced through banks and the cashless society that's independent and free market in your pocket, and we'll get into that and more. But first, make sure to hit that like button, check those links below, share on social media to get around the shadow banning, join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Also find us on Flote.app, BitChute, LBRY, and Minds. Get off of YouTube, my friends, as well as we are completely viewer funded. We are completely demonetized, so make sure to check the links below for GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. You can pledge on Flote.app, and of course we have our Cointree address below, which allows you to donate in many different cryptocurrencies. We also have our Bitcoin below as well. And again, ironic, I know, because we're talking about the cashless society today, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But first, let's talk about this article here out of MarketWatch. As I mentioned, it says Fed says it is developing an experimental digital currency, and it says in the article here, it says to become a reality, any digital equivalent of cash would need lengthy policy process, and no decision has been made to start one, Fed Governor Brainard says. Well, there's a bit more to it than that. As it says here, the Federal Reserve on Thursday announced it is building and testing a hypothetical digital currency equivalent of cash. The goal of the program is to enhance the Fed's understanding of digital currencies, said Fed Governor Lael Brainard in a speech to a conference on innovation sponsored by the Fed's San Francisco Regional Bank. Let me point out, by the way, that there's already a cashless society in the United States to some extent, not the kind that they're talking about, but to some extent. Already, like 97% of cash isn't actually cash, it's just on computers. Hence the lack of liquidity when we see it just going into the stock market, and we see deflation as the Fed's pumping the stock market, trying to keep it alive with trillions of dollars. Anyway, carrying on here, it says, Brainard went into great pains to stress that the central bank is not poised to issue digital dollars. They're not stressed. Yeah, right. Well, they're already kind of doing it, and we'll see that soon. As it says, a separate policy process involving thorny legal questions would be needed if the Fed ever wanted to use digital currency. The central bank has not made a decision to even start such a process, Brainard said. They're really nervously trying to tell people that it's not happening yet, but at the same time, it is happening. Well, this is interesting. As it continues here, it says, and I quote, "We are taking the time and effort to understand the significant implications of digital currencies and central bank digital currencies around the globe," Brainard said. Given the dollar's important role as a global reserve currency, it is essential the Fed remain on the frontier of research and policy development of digital currencies, Brainard says, and I quote, "There continues to be strong demand for U.S. currency, and we remain committed to ensuring the public has access to a range of payment options," Brainard said. Researchers at the Brookings Institution in a paper last month said the central bank digital currency has progressed in the past few years from a bold speculative concept to a seemingly inevitability. In the wake of the coronavirus pandemic, prominent economists have noted that a digital currency would have made it easier for government to send stimulus checks to workers. That's what they're going to use in order to give you free money, quote unquote free money that they just printed out of thin air or they're taking from taxpayers. In order to give you this free money, we need things to be completely cashless, because then it'll be easier and more convenient for us to enslave you. Well, thank you so much, Federal Reserve. It continues here. Brainard noted that China has moved ahead rapidly on its version of a central bank digital currency. Of course, China is basically the main player in this game, and I guarantee you that China will take over as a world reserve currency in the next few years. I guarantee you that China will surpass the U.S. as an empire. Now, I don't want any empire, but if we're going to talk about a very coercive and very dangerous empire, we're going to talk about, well, the U.S. killing millions of people, and then China killing millions of people and enslaving millions under a fascio-communist dictatorship, and that's what they have. And, there's other central banks around the world, like this out of the Bank of Canada's own website, contingency planning for a central bank digital currency, or this one of the World Economic Forum. It says the benefits of a cashless society, and it goes into all these great benefits of enslaving mankind. And then you have other articles like this one where it says Australia could be cashless in 2 years. Australia is already well on the way to a cashless society. The Reserve Bank's 2019 Consumer Payment Survey released in March found that in the space of a decade, cash went from the dominant form of payment to now barely cracking a quarter of transactions. And the reason for that being that Australia has been banning cash left and right, and they're using the COVID situation that was obviously engineered as a way to take people's monetary freedom away, to stop people from being able to make big payments without the government tracking everything they do. Let me explain in a moment after I show you this one other article here. It just shows amid contactless boom, South Korea steps into a cashless society. South Korea very close with China. Here's the issue. The cashless society means not just that you have a card that you tap or whatever it might be, maybe retina scans or whatever creepy stuff it might be. It means that if your money's in the bank, it's not yours, it's the bank's to begin with. But if your money's always going through the banks via digital transactions and legal tender laws, and it's completely centralized, it's never your money, it's always a bank's, and you are essentially enslaved to the banking system, tied in with the government and fractional reserve lending or even zero reserve lending with the central bank. So you are completely enslaved by the government and the banking system. This is the end goal, because if you can control people's money, you can control the people. So if you have a completely cashless society, you have a society that has no control over their own wealth. And if people want to, if the government wants to shut someone down for bad, bad hate think or whatever they call it, hate speech, hate think, whatever it might be, you have thought police going around stopping people on social media for making certain posts or whatever, they can use social credit scores like they have in China, where they judge your subservience to the government and use a score so people that are more subservient to the government can go to restaurants and eat at restaurants, travel, go on airplanes and stuff like that, or buy a house or get a job or whatever it might be with that social credit score. If you're subservient, you win. If you're not subservient, you lose. Your social credit score goes down. They stop your bank account from being able to be used. They seize all your money. You're not able to do anything, and then you are completely screwed. And that's a great form of eugenics that they've come up with over the years. And keep in mind, they've been working with China for a long time. This isn't the U.S. versus China. The U.S. has been aiding China for years at this. Let's go back to Henry Kissinger meeting with Mao Zedong, creating an artificial alliance in order to create trade monopoly on the side of China, which still persists to this day. Then you go from there to the creation of the Trilateral Commission under Zbigniew Brzezinski under the Carter administration, which his whole idea was to create a technocratic world order. Zbigniew Brzezinski praised the idea of technocracy. This is what a cashless society is. You've moved in technologically into this era where you can utilize that technology to enslave humanity, and that's what they're going to do. The Fed's going to come out with some digital currency eventually. I'm not sure when, but it's going to happen. They're basically on their last legs, so they're enjoying printing unlimited amounts of currency. They're on their last legs, generally speaking, because at the end of the day, they're throwing all these trillions of dollars into the stock market. People are paying off the interest on the debt with their taxes if they pay taxes, and then that money that's going into the stock market, eventually it will become liquid. It'll go out of the stock market, end up in people's hands. That'll lead to inflation. That inflation is going to be one of the craziest levels of inflation we've ever seen in history. And the real inflation numbers as it is are over 11% if you consider John Williams' shadow stats, not the official numbers on the Fed's website, but based on the 1980s model of dictating what inflation is. So then you have this massive amount of inflation. Then a loaf of bread goes to $100, $5,000, $100 million. And then what happens? I guess there's a debt jubilee of some kind, but eventually the entire monetary system collapses. It's a world reserve currency. It's a domino effect across the globe. Everywhere in the world will collapse around the same time. In fact, many will collapse before the US dollar, and we're already seeing that with the Turkish lira right now, etc. And there's bank runs, by the way, in Turkey right now. And this will topple over, and China will come up as a new world superpower. And of course, we have Facebook. They'll be using Facebook as social credit scores based on our history on Facebook. Mark Zuckerberg has met with the Chinese government to develop artificial intelligence in China, and they're using it, to scan people's face when they're walking across the street. Say you jaywalk, you get a ticket to your phone in a moment, and you're shamed on a giant billboard, and your social credit score goes down. It's stuff like that. Everyone has to be so in place complacent or else they lose their ability to live even a somewhat comfortable life. And again, they install tyranny via the use of convenience. So we have to use convenience against them to overthrow that monopoly. For example, and I talked about, like gold and silver, I'm a huge fan of, but one way or another, we're going into a digital age. There's no way around that. I'm sorry, there is no way around that. So you have to find a way to utilize that kind of system for freedom, for your own good, for your survival. So that's where decentralized blockchain technology and infrastructure comes in. So you have, for example, a cashless society that goes through the banks. Then you have Bitcoin or Monero, more importantly, or Epic Cash, or different things like this that actually are privacy oriented. And you utilize this against this system. At the same time, it's like it's the saying I've said for many years here at WAM. It's you can use a blockchain to enslave humanity. You can also use it to overthrow that which enslaves humanity, the monetary system and the government. And in the same way as you can use a gun to slaughter a whole bunch of innocent people, but you could use that same gun to save all those people from being slaughtered. At the end of the day, you can use things for good or bad. At the end of the day, the government's going to continuously push for this massive global cashless society. There's no way around it, and we are going digital no matter what. So utilize a decentralized technology to get away from the government, to have a bank in your pocket, to be off grid in the sense that you can have hard wallets that you can put in Faraday cages and all that kind of stuff. Utilize that technology for good to overthrow that very technology being used by government in a centralized way to spy on you, to find out if you're paying taxes or not, to track you everywhere, and to completely control every factor in your life. I think it's never been more important for people to look into digital currencies as a way to stop the rise of government digital currencies. The Bank of Canada itself, in their documents on central bank digital currency, says that the reason is they're concerned about Bitcoin. They're concerned about criminal money. Let's talk about criminal money. How about fiat? Fiat means by control, by fiat, by the government, enforced, legal tender, centralized. Let's not mix up, because it's not physical, fiat with cryptocurrency, because they're not the same thing. Fiat literally means by control, by the government, by enforcement, by fiat. So you look at these, these fiat currencies, and they're used for 99.9% of terrorist funding, usually from governments to the terrorist organizations that they then fight. And then at the same time, they're number one thing used in like pedophilia and child trafficking, which the government is also heavily involved in. So people saying that Bitcoin is good for that kind of stuff, it's nonsense. You could track Bitcoin everywhere. You can literally follow the blockchain and trace it and catch, a criminal that's, trafficking children in a second, or funding terrorist organization, because so many people do that in a second. So the excuses against it are ridiculous. Now obviously there's many forms of wealth, so gold and silver, obviously at the end of the day, value is subjective. It's based on scarcity, application, use, and demand usually, but whatever people are willing to put value on. So people are valuing that US dollar right now, so technically it does have value as long as you can exchange it for goods and services. But one day it will not have any value. Is it printed out of thin air? Absolutely. Is it nonsense? Absolutely. Is it fraud? Absolutely. Is it a Ponzi scheme? Absolutely. But at the end of the day, it does have value as long as we give it value. That is the demand of the market. And we need to put our value where our mouth is and put it into decentralized alternatives, put it into gold and silver, put it into cryptocurrencies. In my opinion, not investment advice. I'm not even looking at this as an investment. I'm looking at this as free humanity, because they will develop this stuff. They will enforce their global surveillance state. They already do. They already have. And they will enforce this cashless society across the world, utilizing things like COVID-19. Oh, you can't touch cash coming out of an ATM because you might get sick. Nonsense. Completely unscientific, but people will fall for it because people are stupid. All right, basically everyone watching us here today is not, but the fact of the matter is most people are very complacent in whatever they're told is right or wrong, and they'll just go along with it until their bitter end. Luckily, humanity is also at the very same time naturally prone to decentralization, and will always find the way to make themselves more free without having any ideological reason for that. So again, you use convenience under the guise of, or use tyranny under the guise of convenience. You can use freedom under the guise of convenience as well. So we have to develop things on the market, be evolutionary rather than revolutionary. Revolution so often just leads to bigger government. Evolutionary concepts like technology and creating things to replace the government, that's the way to go. But nonetheless, free your money, free yourself. Those who control the money will control you. If you don't understand money, the people who control money will understand it and will control you. If you understand money, you can control your money, you can control your life, you can be independent. They want you dependent. Don't be dependent, be independent, free yourself, free your mind, and live by example, my friends. Anyways, I really appreciate everyone watching this video today. Make sure to hit that like button, share on social media to get around the shadow banning, and check those links below. Join our newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Also join us on flote.app, BitChute, LBRY, and Mines. Get off of YouTube. We will be completely off of YouTube by November 5th of 2020. Remember the 5th of November. It is a very good time, a very good day to leave YouTube permanently, only posting trailers after that point. We're coming up on it very fast, so let's get on these other platforms because I won't be on YouTube much longer. And obviously there's ways for you to fund us below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar. It's the best way for us to stay alive right now as we're completely viewer funded and completely demonetized. There's Bitcoin addresses below, as well as a Cointree address where you can find different cryptocurrencies you can donate to as well to keep us up and running. I really appreciate everyone watching today, and until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. My friends, it is go time. We are completely demonetized on YouTube, and we depend on the viewer to stay alive and spread the message of freedom and truth. So check those links below. GoFundMe, Patreon, Subscribestar, anything you guys could do to help keep independent media alive helps enormously in helping spread this message to the masses. So make sure to check those links. Donate to our Bitcoin address on the screen or below. We really appreciate anything you could do to keep us alive. You could check those links below for Cointree as well, where you can find other cryptocurrencies that you can donate and keep WAM alive. Find us on flote.app, flote.app, as well as BitChute and LBRY and Mines. We're on all the other platforms. We are leaving YouTube soon, so make sure to find us at those sites because it's the only way we can keep talking to you, the masses, the great people that actually care about the future of free humanity. Also, join our new newsletter at www.iambanned.com. Anything helps at this point, guys. We need to support free information online. This is the most difficult time in our history, and it takes a lot of hard work to keep our message alive in the face of great evils that have taken over the propaganda news on television as well as on YouTube, where YouTube decides what you can or cannot see. We need your help, my friends. So I really appreciate anything you guys can do. Check those links. There's many ways you can help. Until next time, though, thanks, everyone. This is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change.
I'm sure you have already changed people's minds in your young age because you're involved, and I like that.